I thought it was just another job. Fix a door, take the cash, move on. But the moment he opened that door, everything changed. I wasn't ready for the pull, the connection, or the night that followed. I showed up as the handyman. I left with something I never expected, a reason to stay. What happened next? You wouldn't believe it either. I've been a handyman for over 6 years now. It's not glamorous work, never has been. But it's honest. I fix things, get paid, and move on. Broken faucets, stuck doors, cracked tiles. Same rhythm, every time. Simple, predictable, no surprises. So when I got a call that morning about a door that wouldn't shut right, I figured, easy job. The guy on the line had this calm, polished voice, formal but friendly, said his name was Julian. His study door was sticking, probably weather or warping, no big deal. What was surprising? He offered $1,500 for the hour. I'd like it done today, if possible, he said. I blinked. That was nearly triple my usual rate. Either he was desperate or just didn't care. But I wasn't about to argue. His address was in the upscale part of the city. Pas Claude, one of those modern neighborhoods where every home looks like it belongs in a magazine. Not my usual area. I mostly work the suburbs, older places with peeling paint and personality. This place? It screamed money. I parked outside a dark gray townhouse, clean lines, ivy climbing one wall like it had been designed that way. As I grabbed my toolbox, I adjusted my shirt, suddenly feeling a little too grimy for the neighborhood. Still, money's money. I rang the bell. Seconds later, the door opened. And for a second, I thought I had the wrong house. Julian wasn't what I expected. Tall, barefoot, wearing a soft Henley shirt and black lounge pants that fit just right. His hair was tousled in that effortless way that definitely took effort. And something about him made the hallway behind him look even more elegant. He had the kind of presence you notice, like he always smelled expensive and always knew where to stand in a photo. "Eric?" he asked, smiling slightly. "Thanks for coming on short notice." "Yeah, sure. Where's the door?" I said, keeping it professional, trying not to stare. He stepped aside. Down the hall, first door on the left. I followed, boots echoing on polished concrete. The place was spotless, minimalist, way out of my price range. I passed a sculpture that probably cost more than my truck. The door itself was solid wood, clean edges, just shifted slightly out of square. I crouched, checking the hinges, letting the familiar rhythm of work settle over me. This part was easy. Tools didn't lie, doors didn't flirt. Julian stood nearby, arms folded, watching me. "It's nothing major," I said, looking up. "Bit of swelling in the frame. I'll shave off a few millimeters and reset the strike plate. Shouldn't take long." "Take your time." I worked in silence, pretending not to notice how he lingered in the doorway, how his eyes followed me. Most clients handed me a check and disappeared. Not Julian. He stayed. He watched. Offered me water or coffee, twice. I politely declined.
By the time I tightened the last screw, I'd taken twice as long as usual. Not because the job was tough, but because I didn't want to leave.
I stood and wiped my hands on my jeans. "All done," I said. "Give it a try." He stepped forward and pushed the door open and shut, smooth as butter. "Perfect," he said, then smiled, really smiled. I was kind of expecting something dramatic. That felt too easy. I shrugged. That's what I do. He looked at me, really looked, for a beat longer than casual. Then turned, opened a drawer, and pulled out an envelope. "There's $1,600 in there. You were quick. And I appreciate you coming out so fast." I blinked. "Thanks." Then he hesitated. "Actually, would you like to stay for a coffee or something? You've been working. I figure you're not in a rush." I should have said no. I always say no. Get in, fix the thing, get out. That's the rule. That's how I keep it simple. But something in his voice, casual but hopeful, made me pause. "Sure," I said. "Coffee sounds good." He smiled again. "Come on, it's real coffee. I grind the beans myself, can't stand the instant stuff." I followed him through the open-plan living room, into a kitchen that looked like it belonged on a cooking show. This wasn't a normal job. Julian wasn't a normal client. And I wasn't just here to fix a door anymore. Because deep down, I already knew. Something had shifted. And this? This was only the beginning. Julian's kitchen was picture perfect. Sleek, clean, modern, not a single thing out of place. I took a seat at the marble island. The countertop was cool against my calloused hands. He moved through the kitchen with this quiet confidence, grinding beans like he'd done it 1,000 times. Everything about him was calm, intentional. It threw me off. "So," he said as the coffee brewed, "do you always fix doors that perfectly on the first try?" I smiled faintly. "Not always. Some doors put up a fight. And I'm guessing you don't usually stay for coffee after?" "Never," I said, honestly, as I took the mug he handed me. "I have a rule about that." He raised an eyebrow, sipping his own. "Yet here you are." I met his gaze for a second before looking down at the dark liquid. "You grind your own beans," I said. I figured I'd make an exception. "An exception," I said. It earned a low, smooth laugh from him. "I'll take that as a compliment." The coffee was strong, earthy, just a hint of sweetness. Business being in. "What's your story, Eric the handyman?" he asked, resting both hands on the counter watching me. I gave a half shrug. Not much of one. Used to do construction, bigger stuff, got tired of the inconsistency. Now I just fix whatever's broken. Less stress, steadier work. He nodded, thoughtful. "And do you like it?" "Depends on the day," I said. "I like the work itself. I like that something's broken and I can fix it. That part makes sense. But yeah, sometimes it feels like I'm just going through the motions." He was quiet for a moment, then said, "That still sounds kind of noble, quietly fixing things, making people's lives easier." I let out a dry laugh. "It's screws and sawdust. Not exactly heroic." "Still," he murmured, "it's something." I studied him for a second, then changed the subject. "What about you? What do you do in a place like this?" Julian smiled faintly. "Interior design, high-end clients, mostly, people with more money than taste. I make their homes look like the versions of themselves they wish they were." "Sounds exhausting," I said, "but it explains the house. It's polished." He chuckled. "Polishing is the goal." Surprisingly, the conversation flowed. We moved from small talk to deeper things without the usual friction. He told me about growing up between divorced parents, never really belonging anywhere. I told him about my small-town childhood, the kind where being different meant either staying quiet or leaving. "That sounds lonely," he said softly. I nodded. Yeah, it was. Julian didn't rush to fill the silence. Instead, he came around the island and leaned against the counter beside me. Close, but not too close. Intentional, measured. I could feel him there, even without touch. "You ever get tired of it?" he asked, eyes steady on mine. "Of what?" "Pretending everything's fine, like you're okay with the routine." His question hit harder than I expected. I blinked, glanced down into my coffee. "Yeah, sometimes. But what else is there? You play the hand you're dealt. Or," he said gently, "you decide to draw a new card." I didn't answer. That was too much truth for one cup of coffee. "You don't usually get close to clients," he said. Not a question, a fact. "No, I don't. But you're here," he said, voice low. My throat tightened. I pushed my stool back and stood up. The sound of wood scraping tile was louder than I meant. "I should go," I said. "I came to fix a door. That's it." He didn't argue, just watched me with that same calm intensity he'd had all morning. "I know," he said quietly. "But maybe that door opens something else too." I hesitated with my hand on the doorknob. Not sure why his words stopped me more than anything else. I didn't look back. I couldn't. This was just the beginning. I didn't sleep much that night, even with the fan humming and the windows cracked open to let in the cool air. My body wouldn't settle. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Julian. His quiet stare, the way he said my name, the way he looked at me like I was more than just a guy with a tool belt. I kept telling myself it was nothing. A fluke. A moment of rich man loneliness. Maybe even boredom. But no matter how I tried to frame it, his words lingered like a low hum beneath my skin. Maybe that door opened something else, too. The next morning, I tried to fall back into routine. Got dressed, poured bitter instant coffee, stared at my half-full calendar. I had a gutter job on the west side, then a leaky faucet downtown. Normal stuff. Safe stuff. Nothing that involved warm smiles over coffee or kitchens that smelled faintly of bergamot and cedar. I got through the first job fine, but I was distracted. Kept checking my phone like I was waiting for something. A message I had no right to expect. By mid-afternoon, it came. Julian, you left fast yesterday. Was it something I said? I stared at the screen, thumb hovering. I should have ignored it. Should have moved on. But I didn't. Me. It wasn't you. You just caught me off guard, not used to staying after the job's done. A minute passed. Then two. Julian. Fair enough, but if you're not too busy today, I'd like to see you again. No doors this time. My pulse kicked. I leaned back against my truck and exhaled. This wasn't like me. I didn't blur lines. Didn't chase clients. Hell, I barely returned texts unless they were about a job. But Julian had a way of slipping past all that logic. I was already typing. Me. When and where? We met at a quiet little bar tucked down a side street. Dim lights, soft music. The kind of place where you could disappear in plain sight. He was already there when I arrived. Back booth, nursing a whiskey. Looking too good for a place that smelled faintly of old wood and orange peel. Hey, he said, looking up. His smile was soft, like nothing had been left unsaid. Hey, I murmured, sliding into the seat across from him. The first few minutes were easy. Drinks, small talk, jokes that made him laugh, that low, warm laugh I remembered from his kitchen. He asked about my day. I asked about his clients. Neither of us mentioned what happened yesterday, or why we were really there. But the silence between us, it wasn't empty. It was heavy. Like we were both circling something we didn't know how to name. After our second round, he leaned in a little, fingers trailing the rim of his glass. You're quieter tonight. I shrugged. Just thinking. Paused. Then, this, you, me? No, I said. Then softer. Maybe. His eyes searched mine. You're used to keeping things simple, clear lines. Fix the thing. Walk away. Yeah, that's how I stay out of trouble. And me? Am I trouble? I held his gaze. A second too long. I don't know yet. He smiled again. But this one wasn't polished. It was real. I didn't ask you here to confuse you, Eric. I haven't felt drawn to someone in a long time. And I didn't want to ignore it, just because it's unexpected. I looked down at my drink. This isn't normal for me either. Julian nodded slowly. Then maybe we stop chasing normal, just be here. Something in me let go. My shoulders eased. I exhaled. We talked more after that. Deeper things. Stories I hadn't told in years. About the time I almost moved out of state, but didn't. About the last relationship that ended without a fight, just silence. About how I've been floating ever since, working, sleeping, repeating. He didn't judge. He listened. Offered pieces of himself in return. We stayed until the bar was nearly empty, then stepped out into the cool night air. I should have said goodbye, should have walked to my truck, but we stood there, under a flickering street lamp. Just looking. He stepped closer. Just an inch. But I felt it. Then slowly, giving me time to say no, he reached up. Touched the side of my face. His hand was warm, steady. I didn't move, didn't breathe. His lips brushed mine, soft, careful, testing, and I kissed him back. It wasn't wild. It wasn't rushed. It was a slow unraveling, a quiet confession. When we pulled apart, we didn't speak. We didn't have to. Because everything had shifted again. And that line, the one we weren't supposed to cross, it was already behind us. And deep down, I knew. That was just the second door we'd opened. The rest was going to change everything. We stood there a while longer, breath visible in the cool night air. The world around us had gone still, quiet, suspended. But I could still feel the heat of his mouth on mine, the soft pressure of his hand on my cheek. That kiss wasn't just a kiss. It was something deeper. Something that said, without a single word, we'd stepped into a space neither of us could ignore. Julian's eyes searched mine, like he wanted to say something more. But words would have only complicated it. So instead, we just stood there, sharing silence, sharing breath. Then slowly his fingers slipped from my jaw, trailing down my neck before falling away. "I should let you go," he said, voice low. "Yeah," I whispered, but I didn't move. Eventually, I did turn. I told myself it was just a moment, just one kiss. A lapse. But by the time I got home, my phone buzzed. "If you're free tomorrow, come over for dinner. No excuses. Julian." There wasn't a single part of me that wanted to say no. Because I already knew. I wasn't done with him, not even close. The next time I saw Julian, it wasn't work. No broken door, no pretense, just, "Come by," he'd texted. I made dinner, no expectations, just come. I stared at that message longer than I should have, trying to figure out what no expectations really meant. But in the end, I didn't ask. I just drove. His place looked different at night, warmer, softer, more lived in. Low jazz drifted from the speakers. The smell of garlic and something rich hung in the air. He greeted me barefoot again, in a deep green button-up and dark jeans. Effortless, like he didn't try to look good. He just did. "You really cooked?" I asked, stepping out of my boots. He smiled, leading me toward the table. "I did. I'm full of surprises." The table was set for two. Candles flickered. Wine was already breathing in a decanter. Real cloth napkins. It was simple, elegant, and it hit me in the gut. Someone had made space for me, not because they had to, but because they wanted to. We sat, we ate, we laughed. More than I expected. The food was good. Chicken cooked in white wine and herbs, fresh vegetables, crusty bread. I found myself relaxing in ways I hadn't in years. His stories were easy to listen to, his silences even easier. After dinner, he poured more wine and led us to the couch. We didn't talk about the kiss. We didn't label anything. We just let the moment stretch, soft, slow, real. At some point, he shifted closer. Our thighs brushed. I didn't move. He leaned his head slightly toward mine, voice barely above a whisper. "You've gone quiet again." "I'm just taking this in." He looked at me then, fully, not just with his eyes, but like his whole body leaned into the moment. "You can say no," he said gently. "If this feels like too much, I'll understand." I didn't answer with words. Instead, I reached out, hand sliding to the side of his neck. I pulled him toward me, slow, sure. The kiss this time wasn't cautious. It was real, present. His lips moved with growing urgency, like we'd both been holding back, waiting for the moment to feel right. And now it did. He shifted, swinging one leg over my lap to straddle me. My hands found his back, fingers grazing the hem of his shirt. He let out a soft sound into my mouth. Not quite a moan, but something close to surrender. And I felt it in my chest like thunder. We didn't rush. We could have. His cheeks were flushed, his lips pink and parted, his chest rising fast under my hands. "Still okay?" he asked softly. I nodded. "Yeah, more than okay." When we stood, he took my hand, without hesitation, and led me upstairs. His bedroom smelled like cedar and linen. The sheets were soft. But the way he looked at me, that was softer. His touch wasn't rough, wasn't wild. It was reverent, curious. We explored each other like men learning a new language. One spoken not in words but in hands, in mouths, in every slow movement. There was no pretending, no role to play, just connection, real and raw. Afterward, tangled in the sheets, sweat cooling between us, I didn't feel the urge to get dressed, didn't feel the need to leave. For once, I wanted to stay. Julian lay on his side, fingers tracing slow, lazy circles on my chest. "You okay?" he asked again, quieter now. "Yeah," I whispered, brushing hair from his forehead. "You?" He nodded. "Yeah, this wasn't planned. I didn't think you'd stay." "I didn't think I could stay," I said quietly. "But now, I don't want to be anywhere else." He leaned in and kissed my shoulder. "Then don't go." We didn't say much after that. We just lay there, the city lights casting soft shadows across the ceiling. The silence between us wasn't tense anymore. It was full. That night, something inside me shifted. A gear I didn't even know had rusted finally turned. It wasn't just sex. It wasn't even just intimacy. It was the terrifying realization that I didn't want this to be temporary. And maybe, just maybe, neither did he. Because the line we crossed that night, it wasn't one we could undo. And the further we stepped into this, the more I realized we weren't just falling, we were already in it. I woke before him. For a long moment, I just watched. Julian lay on his side, the soft light of morning spilling over his bare back. One arm draped over the pillow I'd used, the sheet tangled around his waist. He looked peaceful, completely at ease, and for some reason, it made my chest ache. I wasn't used to this. Waking up beside someone, being seen like this, unguarded, quiet. Normally, I'd have been up, dressed, halfway out the door. But not today. Today, I didn't want to leave. I shifted closer, careful not to wake him. My hand traced lightly down his spine, warm from sleep, soft under my fingertips. He let out a quiet sigh, content, without opening his eyes, then turned, curling into me slightly. "You're still here?" he murmured, voice rough from sleep. "Yeah," I whispered. "Guess I am." His eyes fluttered open. And more about remembering. At one point, I rolled on top of him, settling between his legs. He smiled up at me, half asleep, half amused. "How do handymen usually say good morning?" I smirked. "Only for very special clients." He arched up just enough to pull me into another kiss. This one was deeper, heat blooming slowly between us. My hand slid under the sheet, tracing the familiar shapes I'd learned last night. He gasped into my mouth, fingers curling tightly. And neither of us said another word. His hand slid to the back of my neck, pulling me closer. We didn't go all the way again. Neither of us seemed in a rush. We kissed. We touched. Let our bodies find each other in that same slow, unhurried rhythm. It was enough to make my heart pound, my head spin. And neither of us said another word. His hand slid to the back of my neck, pulling me closer. We didn't go all the way again. Neither of us seemed in a rush. We kissed. We touched. Let our bodies find each other in that same slow, unhurried rhythm. It was enough to make my heart pound, my head spin. Eventually, we settled again, breathless and tangled. It was enough to make my heart pound, my head spin. It was enough to make my heart pound, my head spin. Eventually, we settled again, breathless and tangled. Julian pulled back slightly, just enough to look at me. "Like what?" I hesitated, then shrugged. Waking up like this, feeling like I belong here." His smile faded into something softer. "You do. I'm not used to believing that." "I know," he said gently, "but I want you to, because it's true." That hit deeper than I expected. I rolled onto my back, stared at the ceiling. "I don't do this, Julian. I mean, this. I've never let anything get this far. You think I make a habit of inviting strange men into my home, cooking for them and falling asleep in their arms?" I turned toward him. Have you? He smiled faintly. Nope, you're the first. Something about that answer, simple and sure, settled the storm in my chest, but it also made this real. Real in a way that scared the hell out of me. I'm not sure I know how to do this, I admitted. His hand found mine under the covers and gave it a light squeeze. Neither do I, but maybe. Still, as I looked at him, curled beside me, his hand resting over my heart like it belonged there, I knew this wasn't going to be easy. We were two men from two very different worlds, colliding in a space neither of us had prepared for. But for the first time in years, I didn't want to run. Because this wasn't just attraction. It wasn't just about crossing a line. This was about rewriting the blueprint entirely. And I had no idea what came next. But I knew I wasn't backing down. The weekend blurred in the best possible way. We didn't do much, just stayed in Julian's house, wrapped in each other's orbit. Lazy mornings with coffee in bed, afternoons filled with soft jazz and the crackle of vinyl, evenings where the wine flowed slow and easy, just like our conversations. Somewhere between the shared laughter, the comfortable silences, and the way his fingers brushed mine like it was second nature, I forgot about the world outside. But by Sunday night, reality crept in. We were curled on his couch under the same blanket, an old movie playing quietly in the background. I wasn't watching it. I was listening. To the steady beat of his heart under my cheek, to the quiet way his breath moved through his chest. Then he said it. Tomorrow's Monday. I lifted my head and met his eyes. He wasn't smiling. I know. I don't want to pretend none of this happened, Julian said, voice low and careful. But I also know you have a life out there, jobs, routines, and I don't want to keep you in some fantasy. It doesn't feel like fantasy, I said honestly. It feels terrifying, but real. He gave a tired smile. I'm not good at casual, Eric. Neither am I admitted. I thought I was. Thought I could keep things clean, separate, but I can't. Julian sat up straighter. Then we have to be honest, with each other and with ourselves. This, whatever it's becoming, it won't stay inside these four walls forever. I looked down at our hands. His, fine, clean. Mine, rough, calloused. We'd always known our lives were different. But now that difference didn't feel like a wall. It felt like a bridge. If we were both willing to build it. What are you really afraid of? He asked. I hesitated. That I'll mess it up. That I'll want too much. Or not enough. That I won't be able to keep up with you. Or fit into your world. Julian squeezed my hand again. I don't need you to fit into my world. I want to build one with you. Not perfect, not polished, just real. It wasn't a line. It wasn't pretty words meant to make me stay. I saw it in his eyes. He meant it. So I leaned in and kissed him. Slow, grounding, full of everything I didn't know how to say out loud. Later that night, in the dark, his head resting on my chest, I think we've both spent too long being afraid of the wrong things, he said. Maybe it's time we risk something. You know people will talk. They always do, I said. Let them. The next morning, I didn't sneak out. We had breakfast. I shaved in his sink while he leaned in the doorway, watching me with amused eyes. He walked me to the door, kissed me like we weren't saying goodbye, just pressing pause. When do I see you again? He asked. Soon, I promised. No broken door required. He laughed, and I felt it. Really felt it. This wasn't fleeting. This wasn't escape. It was the start of something new. Something we could build. Something that didn't need to be fixed. It's been 3 weeks now. We found a rhythm. Text during the day. Dinner at his place once or twice a week. I still take on jobs. Still carry my toolbox into strangers' homes. But everything feels lighter now. Some nights he comes over to my place. Messy, loud, nothing like his sleek home. And he sits on my couch and eats takeout with me, like it's the best part of his day, and it always is mine. The other night, I was retiling a bathroom, and I caught myself smiling for no reason. The client noticed. Good day? She asked. I just nodded. Because yeah, it was a good day. And for the first time in a long time, I'm not waiting for the other shoe to drop. Because this wasn't just about fixing a door. It was about finding something. Someone. Someone who made all the broken pieces finally make sense. And whatever Julian and I are building, we're not rushing it. We're just laying the foundation. One honest word, one quiet morning, one kiss at a time. Because the craziest thing I ever walked into wasn't a job, it was a life I never expected to find, waiting on the other side of it.